big one, of course, is what the client is willing to pay, right? And it's the market and all that kind of stuff. But then on the other side, you have your competitors. How much are they charging, right? And you kind of have to do your homework of researching that, right? But then on the other side is your basic costs, right? And something you talked about earlier, and you have to take the highest of those three.
Welcome back, everybody. Behind the Grind with Rich Brubaker and
Brian Tam. Let's keep it simple. Brian Tam.
All right. So after some really great conversations about product development, like just leaping into entrepreneurship.
That was a good one. That was a really great talk.
And we've had some great conversations, like kind of like big topics. We want to jump into something, or we want to dive into something that's a little bit deeper, which is pricing and sales. Like, it's a huge conversation I think that I've had with many people over the years about how do you price your services, how do you price your product, what does the market want, and I don't know, man. Like it's been something that I think for me has been an ever-evolving thing. Like, where is pricing for you? Is it something that you put a lot of time into? Is it something you don't worry about? Is it something you've learned through over time?
Yeah, I think definitely have learned a little bit over time. I'm still not super confident about it, because I think it's one of those things that changes as you change, right? And so in the beginning, when I was just starting out, really didn't have any idea about how to tackle pricing, how to charge in general, right? How do you get your money? How do you get paid? All that stuff. That in the beginning, year one, even year two was all kind of like weird for me. I couldn't figure it out.
So how did you? But we were talking like in the first episode, you're just kind of like, I had this gig. Like, how did you price your first gig?
I threw out a number. Honestly, it was just, I honestly just threw out a number. I looked at the work and I estimated. The worst thing is when you're doing these projects, you don't know how much work will be needed. Then even if you're doing price by hour, you don't know. It's probably not going to be accurate, right? So you throw out a project number. You kind of have to go with your gut, and I think that was okay. to start. With like,
and that was just you starting? Like, it was only you?
Yeah. Now, so that was easier.
How do you approach it a little bit differently now? And do you feel a little bit more confident, or are you still struggling?
Yeah, I mean, after you talk to a few people, you're like, hey, how much do you charge? How much do you charge? How much do you charge?
Right? You went that route.
Yeah. And then you're like, all right, well, I know I'm better than this guy. I know I'm not as good as this one. So maybe somewhere in the middle, I can work it out, right?
And like, what's your general approach? Like, do you have an hourly rate for yourself? Do you look at this and go, okay, it's going to take me 6 weeks, and I said generally, and is it scientific, or is it a gut check?
No, totally unscientific.
Totally unscientific.
Totally. I mean, based on the market, right? So not only am I talking to, I won't say competitors, but like friends who are in the same space or similar spaces, right? So I'll look at a range of different services, consulting services, research services, training services, and try to triangulate between that. Design and agency kind of services, right? So trying to figure out somewhere in between, depending on the work scope, right? And so over time, I started to realize I need to have two price tiers. First one would be where we're doing strategic, kind of more difficult work, creative work, where you're really trying to figure things out and everything's unknown. And most people don't know how to do that, don't know what to do there, and they're afraid of it, right? But then there's all this other work, and this is a large bulk of it, right? This is the grunt work, the production work, the things that, it's kind of more basic. And so that's the first thing that I started to evolve and separate the pricing strategies. So like, that was a major breakthrough for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been kind of like this ever-evolving thing, and actually I found that with product it's a little bit easier.
Yeah?
Right? Like if I'm quoting, say, a hackathon or a specific project we don't rerun over and over and over, then I feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident. Okay, so you're not very scientific about it, but how do you know when to raise the rates?
I just did it every time. Basically every time I got a request, I would raise it a little bit. And eventually, where you stop, people start asking about it, then I know it's like, all right, I'm pushing a little too much. Right? And even now, like, I just got a request last week, and I mean, you just have stories for days about this stuff, right? So people will say, I told him this is my rate, and he said, wait, sorry, 14,000 or 40? I said 40,000. He said, no, 14, right? It's like, no, 40. He's like, 4? No, 40, right? And I won't say the currency, but it wasn't, we went back and forth, and he just didn't get it, right? And eventually over message, I reached out to him again, and he was, and because
he
didn't follow up.
He's like 40,000. You're like 14. 40,000 RMB or 14,000 US dollars.
Yeah.
Right?
That actually could work. We should.
Yeah.
I should do
I mean, and this is actually the interesting dance. I mean, it happens
Yeah.
quite frequently, right?
Oh god, it's such a discussion. Every client has their own kind of like random number too. So
Right.
that's other variable that we haven't started talking about yet, right?
Yeah.
So just on our side,
Okay.
that's the fucked up thing.
Okay. And so after what? How many years have you been going now?
6 now, yeah.
What's the difference in pricing that you think that you've achieved over time?
I think we doubled at least.
Doubled? Okay.
I mean, because in the first year it was stupid. Like we were just giving away work basically, right?
Did you do any free work?
Are you kidding? Yeah, I still do.
Still do.
Do free work. Are you?
All
the
right.
time. I mean, I say no to a lot of work, right? So that free work is like, do I like you? Do I like your project, right? And then I'll be like, and then I ask the team, are you guys willing to jump in on this? Because we're a partnership and they decide too.
Yeah.
So how about you?
I did a lot of free. I will say when I first started off, it was a kind of a mix of what do I feel my time is worth, not really understanding what my value was.
Yeah, that's
like
key.
the market. I don't know what the market is. I don't know how much a research project should cost for say 6 weeks or interviewing 30 people or coming to this conclusion. But it's going to take me 6 to 8 weeks, probably 12, and therefore I should hopefully be able to achieve this. But actually, what was interesting is a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I was asked by multiple clients actually, like, look, you've given us this number, like you have an event, and you say project development, you have project execution, you have wrap up, you have whatever, and then you have like these numbers, and you don't try and put too much in there, right? Because one, you maybe you're trying to hide it, you're not sure, like you don't want to overcomplicate it, but like no, we need to know everyone that's on it, how much time they'll spend per week, and what they're rated, and actually. By going through those exercises, I actually got really scientific about it. And so now it's like, okay, Brian's going to cost this much per hour and this many hours, and that's the total. And I start to actually look at the projects even over months now.
Okay.
And I'm starting to feel like, wow, actually that exercise was really uncomfortable.
Right.
But it forced me to kind of actually go, wait a second, I actually
realized up
I was
at the end of the day.
undercharging.
Yeah.
Like if I charge $250 an hour or $100 an hour, like, wow, I was really undercharging myself.
And in the beginning when I was doing that, I knew the system, I knew how to figure that out, but I never went through the work of calculating it, right? And then what I ended up knowing was that we realized that we were overworking. We would quote some number and we would just work as much as we can because we were like project oriented and result oriented at that point. So we signed the contract, we're going to say we're going to do it, then we have to do it, period, right? But how many hours does that mean, right? And now after doing so many years of projects, we know roughly this is what that means. Like when we do this means also that, which also means that. And now we can start to budget at that time. But it really takes, I think it took us like 3 or 4 years because again, our projects are like varied and like all over the place.
Okay.
So we didn't have as many repetitions.
Okay, so let's take this a little bit further. So, first off, you don't start off scientifically.
Right.
What are some things that actually helped you along in understanding what your value was so that you could more appropriately price yourself?
All right. I think the best indicator was like, who's talking to you? Who on the client side are you talking to, right? And are you starting to see a pattern, right? And that was one thing where the requests that we were getting started to be clearer and clearer that it was like down this path. And when there's a pattern, I start to get anxious and I'm like, I need to break this. This is not what I like. And so we need to reposition ourselves to talk to a different type of stakeholder within the organization. I think that because each one has a different tier of budget.
Be a little bit more specific.
Yeah. So when in the past we were talking to a lot of HR people and they were like, give us a training workshop, right? I'm like, or make us feel good. I'm like, I'm not that kind of guy, it's not what we do. But when you need to pay the bills, you need to pay the bills
for the right price.
For the right price, we'll work for you, right? And we did that to up to a certain level, and we still do some of those things. And we're not saying we abandon training all entirely, but there's a lot more like intellectual work that we could be doing.
Right.
And that requires a different type of marketing, which requires and then a different type of sales and a different type of network, right? And so it was something that I needed to figure out over time and recognize that pattern and eventually try to get to the right stakeholder that I want to get to, I need to get to. So that's something I'm working through.
And actually I break it down kind of when I'm doing business development, I actually right now where we are in the business, particularly for hands-on and for collective actually, I'm going to the global level. Like it could be the CSR manager, the sustainability manager, CXO, whatever it may be.
Right.
there's a great book by Keith Ferrazzi called Never Eat Alone. And basically he was kind of talking like the further that person is away from the ground that you're standing on, the more fear they have that they don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And so they're willing to, one, trust you more. Right. Two, they're willing to release more to you. And three, that allows you to actually provide more value. Therefore, your fees will be better. That's awesome. And I really kind of took that approach because actually like it's very easy to sell to the local manager, but the reality is they have the lowest budgets. They also have to go through all those layers through the top, and that's when like procurement will come in. And we can talk about that in a second. But I really adopted like from a hierarchical standpoint. Like I want to be talking to the top person, not just because the pricing is better, but also because you will get larger projects, and you will hopefully, if you do your work, you do your job, they will keep coming back to you. They don't move around as much. Right. Some more stability up there. Yeah. Right. But the one thing I noticed, and I don't know if you've seen this lately, is procurement now, particularly for European companies, they come in like, hey, we've seen this budget. We need you to drop. How have you dealt with that in the past? Like, because you're talking to like the CEO. Have to. Technically, we don't have to. Yeah, we haven't had that situation where they're coming to us and be like, we need to reduce it, right? Yeah. I don't want to get to that point, and maybe that's something I think maybe I need to push the budget even further so that they to ask us to come down. Yeah. This is something I'm still working through. So how do you do it? So actually, I like a quick tip, and if you're in procurement, you're watching this. Don't think I'm about to tell you I inflated 10% so I can bring it down 5. You did once. No, actually, so what I do is I just try and understand. Like, so I will tend to sell to a director, CX, senior manager, and my goal is to get them obviously to scope the project, and then we agree on a budget that they have usually in hand or that they know that they can have access to. Their procurement team, their job is to do one thing, and that is to create payment terms and pricing that is favorable for the company. Right. Which means someone who's probably in their late 20s, maybe early 30s, is going to call me up and be like, hey, so we looked at this, we looked at your hours, we looked at your hourly rate, and based on our experience, too much time, you're too expensive, whatever. We need you to adjust. Okay. And so I'm actually just pretty honest, like, what do you need me to adjust to? Right. And they'll never say that. So like, don't think that like, oh, we need you to come down to 100 and you're at 150. The way I look at it is like, if I'm already at 150, I figure that if they're talking to me, they need somewhere between a 10 and a 20% reduction. Right. For their KPI. And so basically I'll say, okay, look, looking at the contract, there's some things that I would like. Like I know if you're calling me that you're going to give me a 60 or 90 day payment terms. Right. If I give you 5%, will you give me a 30-day payment term? And so actually what I do is I just try and find like, there's a lot of room that they have to help you. Right. Those and you got to help them. And like, look, this is the thing. Like, you can put me to 60 or 90 days, but I can't give up as much because that's my money invested. Right. But if you can help me, or if you can pay this much up front, and actually what I find is that they are more open to those discussions than the person who I sold the project to. I mean, so the levers, if I call them levers, right? So what would you say they are? There's like the amount of time, 60, 30, 90 days, or whatever it is, right? Yeah. Percentage discount. Percentage up front. Yep. Discount overall. Yep, discount overall. What else? And I also think like that will move if it's your first work with them, the first time you work with them. Okay, so that's another factor. They're going to be the toughest. Yeah. Yeah. Because they need to protect themselves. They got to protect themselves. Actually, a lot of procurement people are now in a one-in, one-out situation. So if they want to bring me in, they got to kick you out. Yeah, yeah. And or vice versa. So they have to justify, or they have to go into bidding. Right. Well, you can go to like a direct, but then your second time around, it's actually much easier. Yeah, definitely. Right. So here's the thing I'm starting to think about now is like, all right, when do you start talking about pricing and with who and because like we're just talking about pricing in this general but now we're trying to bring it down to this tactical aspect. So the cycle of a sales cycle, right? So early on you meet somebody, they request something from you, write up a proposal. Do you throw in a number at that point? Do you have a meeting? What's that like for you? Dude, it's like dating. It is. Like at what point do you like make the move? So this is actually going back to our product versus service. Right. I really like product for this. Like you flip over, there's a price tag. And actually when I'm pricing the app's engagement to companies, I put the full scorecard on there. Like this is the pricing. Okay. What tier do you want to be in? Right away. Right off the bat. Because I don't want to talk people through too much, given how much excitement there already is. Okay. And we're lucky because we have a couple core people that they want to join into. So we have a little bit more. So you have some cachet already. Yeah, and they already know that there's measurables, there's numbers, they know
Right,
what they get.
right.
It's really clear.
Mm-hmm.
Where a consulting contract or an event contract, that's different. Then it's like, let's work out the scope.
Yeah.
And I'll walk through 2 or 3 versions of that.
Okay.
I'll get them invested into the process and
Yeah.
comfortable with me and how I'm approaching it. And then I'll usually hit them with the budget at after that. And I will say,
they ask you though? They'd be like, you know, I mean, like
I
they'll be like, I know what you're doing. I know
Yeah,
you're
so-
trying to walk
but
me,
sometimes-
you know, sweet talk us in here.
yeah,
So,
and I still play hard to get.
yeah.
Because again, like there's a few reasons.
Solid.
And one is that if you get them into that process, they're more likely to sign off if they have the money.
Right.
Again, I'm more of a designer than I'm an artist.
Right.
I try and check in.
Okay.
Do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like
Right,
this?
right.
And then with all that,
Then-
and that's actually part of the natural process because
Mhm.
I don't want to put the money up front.
Yeah.
And can
And
we
the
have
work up
this,
front,
but can you keep the same price? Can we do that? Like
Mhm.
you remove all that. which
Scope the work.
You can scope the work, agree on it,
Mhm.
then price it
Mhm.
because that's a final product.
So here you're talking conceptually with the person who's
Whoever.
hiring you or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
And then you get work through several rounds of details of scoping it out, and then they approve it, and it seems like it's what they want, and then they move you to procurement roughly around that point.
Roughly
Do they
around that point.
ever see does that person ever see the money? Like ask you about the money? Are you asking or are they asking?
It really depends.
Yeah.
Both.
Every
So again, like actually, like if it's a hackathon or if it's like a keynote speech or something, usually that money number comes out faster
okay.
because also I know where I'm at. But if it's
Right.
pure consulting, go from research all the way through. It's
Right.
conceptual, or if it's a retainer thing,
Yeah.
you really need to know your scope of work. You need to know how many hours,
Yeah,
how many
yeah.
weeks, how many people you put on it.
It's
Are you traveling?
right,
Like
right.
you need to know all these things, and
The
then I feel
variables.
comfortable locking those things down.
Mhm.
And now I've like traveled enough. Like if I go to Beijing, if I go to
Mhm.
Singapore, I know it costs me $500 for the ticket and
Yeah.
$75 US for a hotel per night
Right.
and $40 for dinner.
Right.
And like you put those numbers in, but until
Mhm.
they tell you got to go to Bangkok,
Yeah.
why put that number in?
So I mean, it really just takes those reps,
Yeah.
going through those iterations each time to figure
Yeah.
out the little nuances of each. Huh?
I've also found that sometimes it's that middle ground that sucks. Like
Meaning?
if it's cheap, like $5,000,
Yeah.
no problem.
Uh huh.
When it gets to like 25 to 50,
Uh-huh.
people get really like, "Nah."
Yeah.
My 6-figure contracts were easier.
Uh-huh.
It was like,
yeah.
because you're talking about a much bigger
Right.
thing.
There's
and they're
more
like,
buffer or whatever.
they feel it's
Yeah.
bigger, but like
Yeah.
now I have one. It's like, you want to charge $20,000? Can we get it to 15? You know, and it's like,
yeah.
but you know the work, and you have to justify your work
Mhm,
more,
mhm.
more closely, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, talking about signaling. What are some things that you hear from people? It's like, oh God, they're going to be cheap, or oh God, this is going to be a great product. Like, what are some
Mhm.
things that? How do you read that sometimes?
So you mean when I'm looking at the client or whoever the
Yeah,
you know,
when you're having those early discussions.
I try to figure out what are they talking about. Are they talking about time or are they talking about result?
Okay.
Right. I think that's a major difference between people. Like, are they looking for you at this time in a week or something like that, or in a month? Because then you know they're thinking kind of transaction and that's the unit of measure in their head, right?
Right.
But if you're talking to somebody who's thinking about the business model and the business strategy, as it were, and like the new offering that you're trying to develop, then there's a lot more conversation to be had because that there's a lot more variance, right? And it depends who's coming up with that strategy and that concept, that creative, right?
Yeah.
So I think that when we can separate the two there, that is a key indicator for me, at least one of them. Yeah.
Okay.
How about you?
I think this is partly why I drag out the process so much sometimes. Is I feel like, are they like, do they take too long to write me back about an email? Are they really aggressive about getting the proposal for me? Like, I've had people like, look, I need the proposal this week to get the budget through.
Yeah.
And sometimes that
You
means
trust
like,
that?
so
that's a red flag to me.
there's times that I do, but there's one company that sent that to me 5 times, right? And actually, I emailed them on they came out to me, they looked at me for another proposal. I was like, I just want to be clear, I've sent you 5 proposals on this ASAP with like 2 or 3 variations each time. No.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it anymore, right?
Yeah.
And they actually came back like, we're really sorry. We really mean it this time.
Okay.
And actually, we just signed it yesterday.
Congrats.
So, I think sometimes like it's reading those signals.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I've had a couple people like, hey, we need this in the next week. And you're like, wait a second, this is a really big project.
Mm-hmm.
Am I the third bid?
Yeah.
and then I don't do anything.
Right.
But sometimes it's like it just takes that time. And actually, I find like if they take the time, the signal's a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But if they also tell me like, look,
Yeah.
we got to get this in because the quarter ends or the year ends, and I want to get this budget spent so I don't lose it,
Mm-hmm.
then that's also usually a good sign.
Mhm.
One, that
That
they're not
they
going
need to do
they're
it,
not going to
yeah.
spend time with me without
Right.
an expectation of an outcome. Also, they're much more flexible on the budget. They're going to be much more open to getting the work. They're more focused on the work
Right.
than on the budget.
Right.
And I tend to look for those signals as well. For me, the other thing that I also keep in mind, and I do this probably on a monthly basis, is I have a spreadsheet. And I think we'll end up talking about cash flow versus sales later,
Yeah.
right? But I look at my spreadsheet every month, every quarter, every year, and I
Yeah.
kind of plug in these big numbers. Like I need 5 projects at this size,
Right.
3 at this size,
Right.
10 at this size. And I try and figure like where am I in these conversations. And therefore, like if I'm in the smaller one, I don't try and push it to a bigger. So I don't actually try and create something bigger.
Sure.
I'm always trying to make sure that I'm judging it the right way, talking to them at the right level, and then pricing at the right size, knowing that procurement's going to call me asking for a 5 or 10% discount.
Right. I mean, you have to have that buffer for yourself, and I mean, most of the time, it's not even a buffer. It's just
Yeah,
what it
you know,
is.
if procurement calls me,
You
honestly,
just have to
if
squeeze
anyone
it.
asks me for like a 5 or 10%, I'm like, no problem. They ask me for 50, I'm like,
Got that right. yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if it's
It's got to be
50
reasonable. I think, you know, going back to the mindset thing, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really key. Is just, you know, how do you position yourself? And you know, you talked about the TEDx's before and the kind of
Yeah.
other kind of credentials that you have. And you know, as you're starting out, you don't have any of that.
Yeah.
You kind of have to earn that somehow. And I think the freebies, when I started out, they were a great way to build some sort of a periphery brand, right? You're just borrowing brand for a little bit, right? Like Startup Weekend, for me, that was one of my early ones, and that was great. Bar Camp was another. There's a lot of like events and conferences and things like that where you can borrow the brand and start to like showcase yourself. Because if you can't, you can either do free work or you can showcase yourself at some sort of thing, right? So that was really key early on.
The other way that I look at it is when I'm developing a new product or a new anything,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to push that out, and I'm trying to like, I will give my first clients, and I'll tell them this, like, this is my first run.
Right.
I will not mark this thing down for you, or I'll try it with you for free or whatever.
Right.
I'll
You
work with
them.
you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I want to bring another layer to
Right.
this. And I find sometimes that that's actually a good way to approach.
Do they care? Do they believe you? I mean, because I feel like when they come back around, they're like, "But you did this for this price last year,
Yeah.
or whatever," and I'll be like,
You can't jump insanely.
"Yeah,
Like I think you can jump up 5, maybe 10%.
yeah,
You know, on a big thing.
sure,
Like on a full day event, like, hey,
Right.
you know, we've upped our game. We're
Mhm.
we're busier now. I don't, but I want to work
It's a
with
new
you.
year,
So
yeah.
look, it's 10% for everybody else.
mm-hmm.
It's 5 for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
And again, like if you have a good rapport with your clients,
right, which is mandatory.
it's
Yeah,
mandatory,
you gotta
especially if
do
they're coming
that.
back to you.
Right,
I don't know. And again, like you know, it's like dating in a way. Like,
step back and forth.
You're dancing on
Trying
the
to
on the
find-
dance, and you're just trying not to step on each other's toes, and you're trying to just like, how's your pricing going now that we got a trade war?
Ooh, well, I'm still working through that. I don't think most of my clients they're not hitting me up for any kind of discount yet, and I think that's something that I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah.
And so I just don't want to rely on the services, and that's why we continue to build out our products, right?
Right.
It's the same conversation as before.
Yep.
Just like now that it's happening, I'm just doubling down on it, right? It's like,
Right.
okay, we got to do a lot more, a lot faster, and a lot more. So
Sure.
more products.
More product. And again,
Then you have leverage. That's the whole point,
Yeah.
right? And going back to what you were saying, you were talking about with your apps, right? And
Yeah.
you know, once you have that, then you got something. They want it, right? So how are you affected with the trade war?
Yeah, I mean, it's really
pricing-wise?
interesting because we have all these labor level projects, and honestly, a lot of supply chains, you know, they're not switching,
Okay.
but they're not investing right now. They're
Yeah,
just trying to figure out what's going to happen. So the way I look at it is most people still have a lot of money in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to wait,
Yeah.
and then the last couple months of this year, it's just going to unleash because
Yeah.
they have to get rid of that money to
I
get
think
the
I
money for
started
next
to
year.
see some of that already this
Yeah.
week with the news that's happened, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Mm.
Now all of a sudden this week there was just been like a couple more requests where like the people who were stalling, they were like, okay, cool. And I don't know if it's like it just happens to be that way, but
Right.
if you see several clients come out of the woodwork at the same time, you kind of
What's going on
put
here?
2 and 2 together, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you look, and we're watching the news and we're seeing what's happening. So
Yeah.
I think that was really surprising to me. So
Cool, man. Well, hopefully we'll survive. Keep thriving.
Absolutely will.
If not, you're going to
Absolutely
see daily vlogs.
No, you won't. No, you won't.
So
Yeah.
every other day.
This was good.
Yeah.
I think we got pretty tactical. We were talking about,
Yeah.
we didn't talk about exact dollars and cents, but I think, it varies per person.
Definitely.
I think, for me, what I took away is like the levers that you have, the people that you're talking to, what was the other one? Figuring out, if you have other kinds of leverage and going back and forth. I think that those are all really, really key points for me.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to take that away. I appreciate this conversation.
Hope you guys
he
do as
said
well.
that to me before, like 2 years ago, and I'm still, absorbing it, right? And so so rewatch this episode, put it in a calendar to rewatch it in a year.
This is a constant process, right?
Exactly.
Like you
That's what I'm
restructure
saying
that
earlier.
framework all the time. So
Yeah. If I could just push it a little longer, right? Stay with me, right? This is something I've been thinking about, right? If I could summarize or add a conceptual layer to this, right? I think there was like 3, consultants. We love our circles, right? Our diagrams. This big one, of course, is what the client is willing to pay, right? And it's the market and all that kind of stuff. But then on the other side, you have your competitors. How much are they charging, right? And you kind of have to do your homework of researching that, right? But then on the other side is your basic costs, right? And something you talked about earlier, and you have to take the highest of those 3.
Right.
Because if you do, you're leaving money on the table, basically.
Right.
And so I go through and I check, like, am I hitting, these numbers pretty regularly?
All right, man.
Beautiful episode.
Thank you very much.
Pricing. Get
Pricing.
it right.
Get
or
it right.
don't. Just keep figuring it out.
Lose money or lose business, either way. You're gonna make it work for yourself. And
Behind the grind.
Yeah, behind the grind. It's
That
definitely
is
a learning process.
That is it.
So,
Thank
you
you so
very much. Have a
Yeah.
great week. Another Behind the Grind with Rich Brubaker and
Brian Tim.